The rain had just begun to tap against the glass walls of Ethan Mercer's penthouse when his intercom chimed a single polite note that meant his scheduled candidate from Solstice Match Agency had arrived. He did not move at first. He remained standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan stretched beneath him like a grid of restless light. Ethan had spent years pretending the view satisfied him that altitude and silence were enough to replace the warmth he had long ago stopped expecting from other human beings. Solstice was supposed to change that, not emotionally, of course. He had no intention of surrendering his heart again after the public betrayal that nearly destroyed both his trust and his company. What he needed was stability, appearances, a controlled domestic arrangement that would soften the edges of his reputation and calm the shareholders who whispered about his solitary life. Solstice promised a companion marriage that was elegant and efficient. No chaos, no unpredictability, no emotional cost. The profile they had sent him was perfect in a way that felt mathematical. The woman was polished and graceful. She held 2 degrees. She volunteered at art museums. The agency even boasted a compatibility score that felt absurdly precise. 98%. Ethan had rolled his eyes at that, but he still agreed to meet her. He needed someone who fit the shape of quiet he had carved around his life. The intercom chimed again. He exhaled, straightened his jacket, and walked to the door. When he opened it, the world did not do what he expected. The woman standing there was not the one in the file, not even close. Instead of elegance, there was rain-soaked hair curling around a face that looked both young and tired. Instead of a tailored dress, she wore dark jeans and a simple blouse, tucked into a thrift store coat that still clung to the cold outside. Her shoes were wet, her breathing uneven, as if she had run the last blocks instead of taking a rideshare. But it was her eyes that struck him like an unexpected weight. They held depth, not the curated depth that some wealthy women tried to manufacture, but the depth of someone who had lived through more than she ever intended to reveal. She pushed a damp strand of hair behind her ear and offered a small, apologetic smile. "I am not the woman they promised you." Her voice was soft but steady. It did not shake the way a less confident person's might have when faced with a billionaire in a towering penthouse. And then she added something that made Ethan blink because he could not decide whether it was audacity or honesty or both. "But I am the one who is here to marry you." For several seconds the room seemed to pause. The rain, the hum of the city, even Ethan's breath. Nothing moved. He stared at her, absorbing the wrongness of her and the strangeness of the moment. He had expected someone practiced and polished, someone who glided across polished marble floors, rather than leaving small droplets of rain behind her. Someone who fit the life he had built, controlled and curate down to the smallest detail. This woman did not fit anything. She was the opposite of the file, the opposite of the safe choice he had paid for. Ethan finally spoke. "You are from Solstice?" "Yes." Her eyes flicked away for a moment, then returned to his with quiet resolve. "My name is Lena Carter. They told me to come. They told me your candidate backed out an hour before the meeting and that you could not be left without an option. I guess I am the option. You are not in the dossier." "No, you were expecting someone else, someone perfect. I know." She swallowed, then lifted her chin a fraction as if bracing for impact. "But I am all they had left, and I cannot afford to say no." He felt something tighten in his chest at the last sentence. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. He had built empires by reading people, and there was no mistaking the truth in her voice. She was desperate and determined, and something about that combination unsettled him. Ethan stepped back slightly enough to allow her inside, but not enough to concede anything more. As she crossed the threshold, she moved carefully, almost respectfully, as if she were entering sacred ground. Her eyes scanned the penthouse with a mix of curiosity and caution. Not envy, not intimidation, something quieter, something almost grateful. When she turned to face him again, she looked smaller against the enormity of the room, but somehow steadier. I know I am not what you expected. I know I do not match the aesthetic or the lifestyle or the score they gave you. But I showed up. I am here, and if you still want the arrangement, Solstice promised you I will honor it. Ethan studied her. The rain outside thickened, running down the windows in long, blurred streaks. Something deep within him shifted just slightly, the way a locked door sometimes shifts before the first click of surrender. Lena Carter should not have been here. She should not have been the woman in his entryway. Yet she was, and something about her arrival felt less like a mistake and more like the beginning of something he could not yet name. "Why did you come?" he asked quietly. Her answer was immediate. "Because I need this. And maybe you do too." Ethan did not know what to do with the truth in her voice. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty. For the first time in years, his pulse did not feel like his own. And the woman who was not in the file had just become the only thing he could not look away from. Ethan closed the door behind Lena, the soft click echoing louder than it should have in the polished quiet of the penthouse. He had spent years designing a life with no surprises, no sharp edges, no emotional entanglements. Everything about him was controlled, efficient, predictable. Yet here he was facing a woman who was none of those things. She stood near the marble island of his kitchen posture, straight but hands clasped lightly in front of her, as if she were waiting for permission to breathe. The sight of her felt like a glitch in his meticulously coded world. Ethan walked past her, grabbed his phone, and dialed the private line, Solstice Match Agency, reserved exclusively for its elite clients. The representative answered instantly with that overly bright tone agencies use when they know they are talking to someone with influence. Ethan did not bother with a greeting. "You sent me the wrong person." His voice held the steady ice that usually made people apologize on the spot. The representative hesitated before replying. "Mr. Mercer, there was an unexpected complication. Your matched candidate withdrew from the program less than 2 hours ago. We contacted you but could not reach you." Lena Carter was the only qualified backup available on short notice. Qualified. Ethan looked at Lena as the word repeated in his mind. She was observing the room, quietly taking in the art. On the walls, the tall shelves of unread books, the sleek minimal lines of a home curated for someone who lived more in his mind than in his body. She did not look like someone Solstice would consider a luxury match. He turned slightly away from her. The woman in the file was a perfect fit. Lena Carter is not. The representative cleared her throat carefully. "We understand, sir, but contractually, a candidate must be provided for the arranged introductory meeting. If you decline her, we will need 72 hours to prepare another option." That was not acceptable. Ethan had a charity gala in 5 days where he was expected to appear with his future spouse, a strategic move orchestrated by his PR team to stabilize investor confidence after a vicious rumor circulated about his private life. He could not show up alone, and he hated postponing anything. His days were scheduled down to the minute. He despised disruption. He ended the call without responding and slid the phone onto the counter. Lena was still standing exactly where she had been. She didn't fidget. She didn't shrink. She waited. It unnerved him more than if she had spoken. Finally, he asked, "What did Solstice tell you about this arrangement that I would meet you today? That the marriage contract would last 1 year with defined terms. That the compensation was set, $15,000 per month for public responsibilities and appearances. End-of-year bonus at $2.5 million, and that you needed this to protect your reputation and your company." She recited it calmly, like someone who had practiced it in her head. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You still came even though you knew you were not the chosen candidate." "I did." Why she hesitated, just long enough to show the answer mattered to her. "Because I need the contract, and because they told me you needed someone immediately. Solstice said you would never accept a delay." They were correct, he thought, but his attention caught on the first part of her answer. "You need the contract." Her gaze lowered, not out of shame, but out of the careful honesty of someone deciding how much truth to reveal. "My circumstances are complicated. I will tell you if you choose to continue this, but not unless you decide you want me here." Ethan studied her face, drawn to the quiet intensity in her eyes. She was not polished, she was not strategic, she was not the perfect match promised to him. But she was present, and something inside him, something he had ignored for years, responded to that presence. He walked toward the kitchen table where the contract folder from Solstice sat untouched. He flipped it open, revealing the glossy pages that outlined expectations and boundaries in unemotional legal language. Public appearances required. Discretion required. Co-residence optional but recommended. Physical intimacy not required. Emotional intimacy highly discouraged to maintain professional clarity. Ethan had laughed at that line during the initial consultation. Emotional intimacy had not been part of his vocabulary since the catastrophic breakup that had been splashed across tabloids. He picked up the pen lying beside the folder but did not remove the cap. He turned to Lena. "If we do this, I need truth. No secrets, no surprises. I have had enough of those for a lifetime." Lena held his gaze with surprising steadiness. "I can give you truth, but I cannot promise it will be comfortable." Ethan looked down at the contract again. He could reject her, demand a new candidate, insist on the exact version of perfection he had been promised, but the thought felt strangely hollow. He had chosen Solstice for convenience, not connection. Yet the woman standing in front of him, messy and real and unpredictable, triggered something deeper than convenience, something he had not felt in years. Lena took a small breath, bracing herself. "If you say no, I will leave right now. But if you say yes, I will be loyal to this arrangement. I will protect your privacy. I will follow every expectation, and I will not embarrass you." Ethan felt the word embarrass catch somewhere in his chest. He had been humiliated once brutally and publicly. One betrayal had left him permanently guarded. He did not want a second. He approached her slowly. "You understand that this arrangement has no room for emotional involvement. Yes, you understand that this is transactional. Yes. And you are prepared for the scrutiny? Yes. Her voice did not waver. Ethan stood only a few feet from her now. She looked smaller up close, but stronger too, like someone who had survived storms without shelter. Against every instinct he had trained into himself, Ethan extended the contract toward her. Then let us begin. Her breath caught just slightly, but she nodded. Thank you. Ethan did not respond. He simply watched her as she stepped into the place that had never been meant for her, yet somehow already felt as if it belonged to her presence. Against his will, something old and dormant flickered in his chest, a beginning or a warning. He could not tell the difference. Lena held the contract with both hands as if it were something fragile, even though it represented the most transactional arrangement imaginable. Ethan watched her from the opposite side of the room, arms crossed posture, sharp, his expression unreadable. The penthouse was quiet, except for the faint hum of the city beneath them, a reminder that Manhattan never slept, even when people desperately wanted to. Lena read through the contract line by line. She did not skim or rush. She traced each expectation with her eyes, imprinting the rules into her mind. Ethan found himself strangely aware of the way she breathed, the way her eyebrows drew together with concentration, the way she handled the documents with respect rather than anxiety. When she finally set the papers down, her hands trembled just slightly before she hid them behind her back. This is a lot, she murmured. Ethan kept his voice measured. Do you want to back out? No. She answered too quickly, then corrected herself. I mean, no, I accept the terms. I just want to be honest about the fact that I have things in my life that might not fit perfectly into this neat arrangement. He remembered her earlier words. My circumstances are complicated. This was the moment for him to demand details, but something about the vulnerability in her tone made him pause. Lena swallowed, pressing her palms lightly against the edge of the counter as if steadying herself. Before you decide if you want to continue, I should tell you why I need the money. Ethan's jaw tightened. He was used to people wanting something from him. Money, access, reputation. He had learned to expect it, but something about the way she said need rather than want made his chest shift in a way he did not appreciate. Go ahead, he said. My mother is sick. Lena's voice softened and a faint ache seemed to settle behind her eyes. She has a degenerative heart condition. Insurance covers almost nothing. Her medications alone cost more than my monthly salary used to. Ethan caught the phrasing instantly. You are not working now. I was. At a library, part-time. They cut my hours when the budget changed. Libraries are easy to defund when politicians want to look like they saved money. She tried to laugh at her own bitterness, but the sound broke halfway through. I looked for other jobs, anything, but with my mom's medical needs, I could not take positions that required long night shifts or unpredictable hours. And Solstice told me this arrangement would give me stability for a year to take care of the person who raised me. Ethan's gaze flicked over her face, taking in the exhaustion she hid beneath her steady voice. You joined a companion marriage agency because you needed medical money. Do you think less of me for that? Her question was quiet but pointed. Ethan did not answer immediately. He considered her carefully, trying to separate what she said from what he felt. Most people pretended to enter these arrangements for glamorous reasons: social status, financial ease, freedom from conventional dating. But Lena was the only person he had met who admitted the raw truth. Survival. He did not think less of her. If anything, the honesty disarmed him. He finally said, "I think you did what you had to do." Her eyes flickered with a warmth she did not voice. "Good," she whispered, "because I do not want to lie to you. Not if I am going to live here. Not if the world is going to think we are married." Ethan felt something tighten in him. The world will not just think it will believe it. I know. Lena exhaled slowly, then stepped closer, resting her fingertips lightly on the contract. "But there is something else you should know before I sign this. Something I have not told Solstice." Ethan's muscles stiffened. He had anticipated complications, but the tone of her voice made his instincts sharpen. "What is it?" She hesitated, searching his expression, as if checking whether he was the kind of man who would weaponize her truth. "My sister is missing." The words hit the room like a sudden crack in the glass. Ethan straightened. "Missing? Yes." Lena's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. "Her name is Emily. She disappeared 8 months ago. Police said there was no sign of struggle, no financial activity, nothing to follow. Everyone told me to accept that she probably left by choice, but I do not believe that. Not for a second." Ethan remained silent, allowing her space to continue. "A few months after she vanished, I started getting messages. Anonymous, threatening, telling me to stop looking for her, telling me I should mind my own life, telling me bad things happen to girls who dig too deep." Ethan's expression darkened the protective instinct in him, rising without permission. "You did not tell Solstice any of this. They would not have accepted me if I had. The truth was too messy for their clean algorithms. So I kept it to myself. Should I have told you sooner? Probably. But I needed the job, and I need to keep searching for my sister. My mother believes she is still alive. I believe that too." Her voice cracked on the last sentence. Ethan did not speak for several seconds. The room felt still suspended between them. He had spent years avoiding anyone with emotional complexity, because the last time he allowed someone close, he nearly lost everything. But Lena's complexity did not feel manipulative or dramatic. It felt painfully human. It felt honest. It felt like something real had walked into his structured world and refused to fit into his parameters. He stepped closer, his voice low. "These messages you received, are you still getting them? Occasionally?" The latest one was 3 weeks ago. I deleted it, but I remember every word. They said stop looking for her, or you are next. Ethan's eyes hardened. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you asked for truth. And because if I am going to live in your home and pretend to be your wife, you deserve to know what might follow me." He studied her again, more intently this time. This woman was not the polished candidate he ordered. She was unexpected, complicated, wounded, and real in a way he had not been prepared for. And against his own intentions, something inside him responded with a pull he could not explain. His voice lowered. "I have not decided yet." She nodded. "I know, but if you want me here, you get all of me, even the parts that scare me." Ethan felt something shift inside him. A decision beginning to form. Not because of logic, not because of convenience, but because something about this woman's truth felt like an anchor he had not realized he missed. Lena moved into the penthouse the next morning carrying everything she owned in a single canvas suitcase that looked small enough to fit inside one of Ethan's custom cabinets. Ethan watched from a distance as the building staff greeted her with polished politeness, clearly unsure how someone so ordinary could be associated with the billionaire who usually kept the world at arm's length. Lena sensed their confusion but did not react. She simply thanked them with the same quiet sincerity that had unsettled Ethan since the moment she appeared at his door. Once inside, she stood in the center of the living room, turning slowly as if absorbing the sheer scale of the space. The penthouse stretched across the entire top-floor walls of glass framing Manhattan from every angle. But Lena did not look intimidated. If anything, she looked curious, searching for the parts of the home Ethan ignored. Her gaze landed on a neglected shelf near the far window where a vase of flowers had wilted long ago. Ethan had not even noticed. She walked toward it, gently lifting the dry petals between her fingers. "You do not like flowers. They die too quickly." She smiled faintly. "Everything dies too quickly if no one waters it." Ethan did not know how to respond to that, so he said nothing. Instead, he gestured toward the guest suite where she would stay. "You can put your things there. It has its own bathroom and workspace. You can change anything you want. I do not care about decor." Lena nodded and moved toward the room, her steps soft against the polished floor. When the door closed behind her, Ethan exhaled, feeling the unfamiliar weight of another presence in his home. It had been years since anyone lived with him, years since footsteps, other than his, echoed in the hallways. He tried to return to his office corner and immerse himself in work, but his eyes kept drifting back to the closed door. He told himself it was caution, awareness, but something deeper tugged at his focus. He was not used to sharing space. His life had been an echo chamber by design. Controlled, predictable, silent. Lena Carter filled that silence simply by existing. She emerged 20 minutes later, her coat folded over her arm suitcase, tucked neatly against the wall of her room. She had changed into a soft brown sweater and simple dark jeans clothes that looked comfortable rather than curated. Ethan noticed her hair was still slightly damp from the rain outside, curling delicately around her face. She looked more like someone who belonged in a small-town library than in a billionaire's penthouse. Yet she was here, and for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to acknowledge the truth he had been ignoring. He did not regret that she was here. They ended up in the kitchen at the same time, a coincidence neither of them addressed. Ethan opened one of the high cabinet doors, revealing rows of untouched ingredients he rarely cooked with. Lena watched him for a moment, then spoke gently. "You do not cook often. I order meals," I figured. She opened another cabinet near the sink, scanning its contents. "You do not have basic spices, or flour, or coffee grounds, or anything that is not delivered in fancy containers." Ethan frowned, unsure whether he was being judged or simply observed. "I do not have time to cook." She smiled softly. "People make time for the things that comfort them." Ethan paused. The sentence hit him deeper than he expected. He turned to face her fully. "What comforts you?" Lena hesitated. "Books, stories, places where things make sense, even when real life does not." He considered her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly he asked, "Which room do you want for your books?" She blinked. "My what?" "You must have books. You mentioned them the moment you arrived yesterday. They matter to you, so you should have a space for them here." Lena seemed startled by the gesture. She stared at him as if trying to decide whether he was being sincere. When she realized he was, her voice softened. Thank you, that means more than you think. He looked away, uncomfortable with the warmth in her tone. Do not thank me. It is just practical. If you live here, your things should too. Still, he felt something shift in his chest when she smiled. It was small but disarming, a quiet ripple against the surface of his composure. They continued preparing a meal together, though Ethan mostly watched, while Lena moved with natural ease, opening drawers and cabinets, as if reading the space through intuition. She found a cutting board, chopped vegetables, rinsed fruit. She hummed under her breath a soft sound that worked its way into the quiet corners of the penthouse. Ethan found himself asking, "You like cooking? It feels like building something with your hands, something simple and alive." His throat tightened slightly at the word alive. It was the opposite of how he had been living for too long. After dinner, they sat across from each other at the marble table. Ethan rarely ate here. The table always felt too large for one person, but Lena's presence softened the space, making it feel less like a museum piece and more like something meant for people rather than perfection. Conversation flowed in small, careful strands. She asked about his schedule. He asked about her mother's condition, surprised at how easily he found himself wanting to know the details. At one point, Lena reached for her glass, and her sleeve pulled back enough for him to see faint bruises along her forearm. They looked old, but not accidental. He froze. How did that happen? Her eyes dropped instantly. It is nothing. Old things do not appear by themselves. She held the glass tighter, shoulders stiff. I do not want to bring trouble into your life. He exhaled slowly, resisting the urge to press further. Not tonight, not yet. She was already housing too many secrets, but he noted the bruises and filed them away, in the part of his mind that never forgot anything. Later that night, Ethan walked past the living room and found Lena curled awkwardly on the sofa, fast asleep, with a book resting on her chest. The lamp near her cast a soft light across her face. She looked peaceful in a way that made his chest ache with a strange, uninvited tenderness. He stood still, watching her for a moment longer than he intended. Something about her presence felt like quiet in a way he had not realized he missed. Something in him whispered that the life he thought he wanted was already changing shape because of her. He did not know what that meant. He only knew he was not ready to look away. The next morning, Lena woke to a soft knock on her door and the distant hum of Manhattan beginning its daily climb into chaos. She blinked against the early light, took a breath to steady herself, and reminded her racing mind that this was real. She was living in a billionaire's penthouse. She was in a contractual marriage arrangement. And the man she now lived with was the most guarded person she had ever met, someone who watched the world with a kind of sharpened caution, as if preparing for the next inevitable betrayal. When she stepped out of her room, she found a neatly printed schedule waiting for her on the kitchen counter, with Ethan's signature decisiveness in every detail. Public events, weekly obligations, agency training sessions, outfits suggested by solstice stylists, image expectations written in crisp bullet points. Learn to move like someone used to being photographed. Practice neutral elegance. Maintain emotional balance. Lena stared at the paper, then at the immaculate kitchen around her, and felt the faint tremor of something that was not fear exactly, but discomfort. She had stepped into a life with rules she had never imagined herself following. Ethan approached as silently as he always did, a presence felt before seen. He set his tablet on the counter. Solstice wants you in a training session today. They will teach you what they call composure etiquette. Lena raised an eyebrow, which is code for pretending to be someone I am not. It is code for making sure you do not say anything that reflects badly on either of us. Ethan delivered the sentence without harshness, but with cold truth. Lena folded the paper slowly. Do you want me to pretend? The question struck deeper than he expected. I want you to understand the role you agreed to. She met his eyes searching them. And what exactly is the role I am supposed to play? He hesitated. His entire life was built on avoiding emotional exposure, and she seemed to see through him with uncomfortable clarity. The role is a partner, someone the public finds stable and reassuring, someone elegant, someone without complications. Lena let out a soft, humorless laugh. I am the wrong woman for that. You chose a file meant to look perfect, and by accident you got me. Something flickered across Ethan's expression, something almost like conflict, but he masked it quickly. Perfection is not required. Consistency is. Lena nodded once. If that is what you need, I can learn. She paused, her voice lowering. But you should know that real marriages are not built on consistency. They are built on truth. Ethan's jaw flexed, not out of anger, but defensiveness. Truth is dangerous. Truth has consequences. She studied him. Someone hurt you badly. He stiffened. That is not part of this arrangement. No, but it is part of you. And if I am supposed to pretend to be your wife, even for a year, I should understand the person I am standing beside. Ethan turned away slightly, staring through the glass wall at Manhattan, as if the city might offer him the armor he needed. My last relationship ended publicly, violently publicly. Lies, headlines, photos taken out of context, a partner who used me to climb and then tried to destroy me when I would not give her more. I survived it, but the company almost did not. So yes, I prefer control now. Predictability. Contracts over emotions. Lena absorbed every word with a softness that unnerved him. Thank you for telling me that. He shook his head. It is not a confession, it is a caution. I know. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but certain. But I think people marry for many reasons, even the ones they never admit. Some marry for safety, some for rescue, some for loneliness, some for escape, some for hope. She met his eyes fully. And some marry because they want someone to choose them, even just once. Ethan held her gaze, something subtle tightening behind his measured expression. And which one are you? I am marrying for survival and for my mother, but secretly. She took a breath. I also want to believe I am worth choosing, even if it is only for a contract. Ethan did not speak, but something shifted in the silence between them, something fragile, something he did not know how to name. Later that afternoon, Solstice sent a private driver to take Lena to her first companion training session. Ethan watched her leave from the balcony, hands in his pockets, trying to ignore the strange emptiness she left behind in the space. The agency office was sleek and cold, filled with polished glass, and people who seemed to glide rather than walk. Lena sat through lessons on posture, eye contact, media composure, and social silence. They taught her how to hold a champagne flute without looking anxious, and how to smile subtly without showing too much teeth. At one point, the instructor placed a hand on Lena's shoulder and said, "You must always behave like someone who belongs beside wealth." Lena wanted to laugh, or cry, or walk out. But she knew why she was here, for her mother, for Emily, for the hope that this arrangement might give her the space and resources she needed to search for the sister she refused to believe was gone. When she returned to the penthouse, Ethan was in the living room reviewing documents. He glanced up and paused. "You look different." She touched her hair self-consciously. "They made me walk with a book balanced on my head, and they told me to stop pushing my glasses up because it looks timid." Ethan studied her as if seeing her in a new light. "You do not need to change who you are just because they say so." She blinked. "I thought consistency mattered to you." "It does, but authenticity matters more when people look too closely. Pretending invites attention." Lena stood there surprised by the unexpected softness in his voice. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "So what do you want me to be?" He looked at her for a long moment, honest and steady. "If you can do that, the rest will not matter." Lena exhaled, feeling something warm settle inside her chest. She could be many things. She had been many things to survive. But honest and steady were the two she had clung to hardest when life kept trying to shake her apart. "Then I can do that," she whispered. Ethan nodded once, and for the first time since the contract began, Lena felt the faint beginning of something that did not fit neatly into any arrangement, something that felt dangerously close to trust. The night of the Mercer Foundation Gala arrived with the kind of cinematic precision Manhattan seemed designed for. Rain clouds had cleared, leaving the city polished and reflective, every streetlight shimmering across wet pavement like scattered jewels. The venue, a historical museum, restored with modern glass architecture, glowed against the skyline. Inside, photographers waited, donors waited, investors waited. And Ethan, who hated the spectacle of events like this, stood near the entrance, adjusting the cuff of his suit with the distant expression of someone preparing for battle. He had attended hundreds of galas, but tonight felt different. Tonight he would appear with a wife, even if it was a contractual title. And that wife was walking toward him now. When Lena stepped out of the car, the world seemed to shift around her. The agency had styled her for the evening, but even their polished touch could not erase her essence. She wore a deep navy gown that flowed around her like the night sky itself, elegant without trying to be. Her hair was softly pinned, a few strands falling naturally around her face. She looked nothing like the candidate in the original Solstice file. She looked alive, real, and completely unforgettable. Ethan stared, unable to stop the breath that caught in his throat. She approached him slowly, her eyes searching his face, as if asking whether she belonged here. His voice came out low. "You look stunning." The compliment was simple, but the way he said it made warmth rush up her spine. "Thank you." She glanced around at the camera flashes building outside the entrance. "They are all waiting for you." "No, they are waiting for us." The word "us" did something to her, something that made the contract feel less transactional and more like a strange, delicate thread tying them together. As they stepped toward the entrance, Ethan placed his hand lightly on the small of her back. The touch was gentle, barely there, but it grounded her. The moment the doors opened, the lights erupted. Photographers leaned forward. Voices rose. Questions flew like sparks. "Is this your wife, Mr. Mercer? When is the wedding celebration? How did you two meet?" Ethan kept his posture calm, his expression controlled. But his hand never left her back, guiding her with quiet steadiness. Lena kept her chin lifted the way the agency taught her, but the intensity of the attention, pressed against her chest like a weight. These people knew nothing about her. They saw elegance, but not the library worker with overdue bills. They saw grace, but not the sleepless nights worrying about her mother. Ethan sensed her stiffening. Without breaking stride, he leaned in just enough for only her to hear. "Breathe, you are fine." His voice, low and reassuring, steadied her pulse. Inside the museum, the chaos softened into refined noise. Chandelier light scattered against the marble floors. Waiters drifted among the guests with trays of champagne. Wealth moved through the room like a scent. It was a world Lena had never imagined stepping into. Ethan guided her through introductions, board members, politicians, media faces. Each time someone asked about their relationship, Ethan answered with a warmth that felt more real than rehearsed. "Lena is extraordinary. She steadies me. She brings balance." Lena looked up at him each time, surprised by his sincerity. He was supposed to be cold, guarded, detached. Yet tonight he spoke as if she were more than a contractual necessity, as if she were someone he had chosen. At one point they drifted toward a quieter balcony, overlooking the museum's garden. The air was cool, and the distant hum of the city felt softer here. Lena exhaled, letting the calm settle over her. "You handled that well," Ethan said. "You did not look overwhelmed once. I felt overwhelmed the entire time. That is the difference between impression and truth." She smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips. "Why did you say those things back there? About me balancing you?" He looked out over the balcony railing. "Because it is true." She froze at the simplicity of his answer. Ethan turned to her, studying the emotion in her eyes. "You grounded the room without trying. Whenever someone spoke to you, they listened. That is rare and valuable." His praise felt heavier than the city air. Lena tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I do not know how to be perfect. I only know how to be honest." "Sometimes honest is perfect," Ethan murmured. The sentence hung between them, warm and fragile. Their eyes met, and for the first time since the contract began, something unspoken shifted toward something undeniably real. A gust of wind swept across the balcony, making Lena shiver. Ethan noticed instantly and shrugged off his jacket before she could protest. He draped it around her shoulders gently, his hands brushing her arms. The touch was subtle, accidental, even yet electricity raced through both of them. "This is unnecessary," she whispered. "I am fine. You are cold. I can see it in your hands." She glanced down, surprised he had noticed something so small. "Thank you," she murmured. His voice lowered. "You do not need to thank me for caring." She felt her breath hitch. He was too close, too warm, too human, in a way she never expected from the stories she had heard about him. Just then, the lights dimmed inside the museum, signaling the beginning of the main presentations. The rhythm of the night shifted. Ethan straightened and offered his arm, ready to go back in. She nodded and placed her hand on his forearm. That single point of connection seemed to steady both of them. During the speech Ethan delivered on stage, Lena stood to the side, watching him with quiet awe. He spoke with a calm authority, not the cold detachment she expected. He cared about the foundation. He cared about the people it helped. And every so often, even while addressing the crowd, his eyes flicked toward her, as if checking she remained steady. When the applause ended and guests moved toward the reception area, a woman in a glittering gown approached them. A journalist. She studied Lena with a hint of curiosity. You are not the usual type for men like him." Ethan's posture stiffened. Lena felt heat rush to her cheeks, but forced herself to hold the woman's gaze. Maybe the usual type was not what he needed. The journalist blinked, taken aback. Ethan's expression softened with something close to pride. They moved away from the crowd again and found themselves near a sculpture lit by golden light. Ethan exhaled. "You handled that better than most professionals I know. You handled tonight better than I expected anyone could." Lena smiled faintly. "It was easier because you were there." He looked at her for a long moment. Too long. The lights above them cast a soft glow over her face, turning the whole scene into something suspended between reality and a dream. Ethan stepped closer, drawn in by something neither of them could deny. Lena did not step back. The world seemed to narrow to the space between their breaths. The moment felt like the starting point of something irreversible. Then someone called Ethan's name from across the room, breaking the spell. Ethan blinked, stepping back with a controlled breath. "We should go." But the energy between them had changed, irrevocably. When they returned to the penthouse later that night, Lena paused in the living room, still wrapped in Ethan's jacket. He watched her with an intensity he did not try to hide. "Tonight was different," she whispered. "Yes," he said quietly. It was. And they both knew it was the night everything began to shift. For the next several days after the gala, something unspoken pulsed between Ethan and Lena, like a quiet current flowing through the penthouse, subtle but constant, as if both of them were trying very hard not to name whatever had taken root that night. They moved around each other with new awareness, their conversations carrying a warmth that had not existed before their silences, no longer uncomfortable, but strangely intimate. But beneath that growing softness, something else was stirring, something Lena hoped she could outrun a little longer. On a rainy afternoon, the kind of gray Manhattan day that made the whole city feel half submerged, Ethan returned home earlier than expected. Lena was sitting on the floor of her temporary book room, sorting through notes, medical bills, and old letters. She scrambled to close the folder when she heard his footsteps, but not fast enough. Ethan noticed instantly. "What is that?" His voice was calm, but the precision in it cut like glass. Lena swallowed. "Just paperwork." He stepped closer. "Lena, look at me." She did, and in that moment, the secret she had been holding for months, the one she desperately needed to keep, felt dangerously close to the surface. Ethan lowered himself to her level, kneeling in front of her with quiet authority. "You are hiding something again." She looked down. "It is not about us. Everything that follows you follows me now. That is what marriage means, even a contractual one." His voice softened. "Tell me." She shook her head. "If I tell you, you will want to get involved. And you should not." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You do not get to decide what I should or should not be involved in. I need to protect my world, and you are in it now." The ache in her chest deepened. "It is not that simple." He exhaled. "Nothing is simple, but I need the truth." She hesitated too long. Ethan reached gently for the folder she had tried to hide. She flinched. He froze. "Why are you reacting like that?" Anxiety rose in her throat. "Ethan, please, do not." But he had already seen enough. Her name on letters, threats, a copy of the missing persons report. And worst of all, a printed email she had received just 2 days earlier. "Stop searching for her, or I swear you will disappear next." His expression changed completely, cold, sharp, betrayed. You told me the last threat was weeks ago. Lena's breath shook. I did not want to worry you. Ethan stared at her, anger and hurt tightening in his posture. You lied to me. I did not lie. I just withheld. That is the same thing? His voice was no longer steady. It cracked with old wounds resurfacing. I told you I needed truth. You promised me that. I know. Ethan rose to his feet, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that only appeared when he was fighting emotion he did not want to show. You looked me in the eye and told me you would not bring chaos into my life. And now I find out someone is threatening you. Threatening us. Her heart raced at the word us, but this was not the moment to cling to it. I was trying to protect you. That is not your decision. He turned away, pacing toward the windows, as if the city might help him make sense of the storm erupting inside him. My life has been attacked before, by people I trusted, by people I let close. I will not go through that again. Lena rose slowly, her voice shaking. I did not mean to become a burden. You are not a burden. You are a risk. The words landed like a blow. She felt them in her ribs, in her breath, in her shame. Ethan forced himself to look at her again. And I cannot afford another risk, not now. Not when the entire board is watching me. Not when investors look for any sign of instability. And you hid something that puts all of that in danger. Lena stepped back, as if physically pushed. I never asked to be your responsibility. You agreed to be my partner, in name only. Ethan's expression twisted. But you keep becoming more than that, do you understand? You make me feel things I do not want to feel. You pull me out of the numbness I built to survive. And now I am angry because you did not trust me with the truth. His voice broke at the end, rawer than she had ever heard it. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. I was scared, not of you, of losing the only safety I have left. I did not want the threats to chase me here. Ethan closed his eyes, steadying himself. You should have told me anyway. I cannot stand secrets, not after everything I have been through. Her voice softened. I know about your last relationship. I know how badly she hurt you. This is not the same. Yes, it is. It is betrayal. Not by intention, but by omission. And it feels the same. She stepped toward him, but he stepped back. The movement felt like a door closing. Ethan, please, let me explain. He shook his head, stepping further away. I need space. I need air. I need to think. She reached for him instinctively. Ethan, he flinched, and the flinch broke her completely. That tiny recoil told her everything she needed to know. Her presence was no longer comfort. It was danger. He whispered, I cannot do this right now. Please go to your room. She froze. The distance between them felt colder than the tallest skyscrapers outside. Slowly, silently, she nodded. Ethan watched her turn away, watched her shoulders tremble as she walked down the hall. And something inside him shattered with each step she took. When her door closed, Ethan pressed his palms against the cold glass window, the city stretching beneath him. He hated feeling this way, hated the rising fear that he might lose, the first real connection he had felt in years. He whispered into the empty room, Why did you not trust me? In her room, Lena sank to the floor, clutching the folder of threats to her chest as tears finally escaped. She whispered into the darkness, I was trying to protect you. But the truth hung heavy in the air. Secrets had consequences. And hers had just broken, the fragile thing growing between them. Rain hammered the windows, the next evening relentless and cold, as if the entire sky had decided to break open at once. The atmosphere inside the penthouse echoed that storm. Ethan had barely spoken since the confrontation. He hid in his office, buried behind layers of silence that felt sharper than anger. Lena moved quietly through the apartment, careful not to disrupt the fragile space between them. Every sound she made felt like trespassing. Every breath felt too loud. She kept replaying the moment Ethan flinched away from her, each replay striking her chest with the same raw force. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to explain why she hid the threats, why fear had carved itself into her decisions, why trust felt like a currency she no longer knew how to spend. But when she approached his office with a tentative knock, he did not answer. The distance between them felt like an entire ocean. She whispered through the closed door anyway. "I am sorry, Ethan, for all of it." But silence was the only response that came back. That night she lay awake listening to the rain, her mind cycling through every memory of her missing sister. Emily at the kitchen table with coffee and laughter. Emily scribbling notes on schoolwork. Emily hugging her tightly the evening before she vanished. The threats were not abstract fears. Lena lived with the knowledge that someone out there knew where her sister went. Someone who wanted her silenced. She clutched the edge of her blanket, fighting the terror that she had ruined everything with Ethan. Just when her eyes finally closed, a sudden violent pounding erupted at the front door. Not knocking, pounding, the kind that made her whole body seize with instinctive fear. She shot up from bed. Ethan's footsteps thundered from the office at the same moment. Their eyes met across the hallway, both of them tense alert. Who pounds on a billionaire's door in the middle of a storm? Ethan approached, first shoulders rigid. "Stay behind me." Lena obeyed, heart pounding. Ethan unlocked the security latch and pulled the door open. A man stood there in the dim hallway, soaked from the storm, despite the short distance from the elevator. Rain dripped from his jacket. His expression twisted somewhere between anger and ownership. His eyes went straight to Lena. Lena, the way he said her name made her blood freeze. Her breath caught painfully as memories she had worked so hard to bury surged up. "Eric." Ethan glanced sharply at her. "You know him?" Lena's voice broke. "He is my ex-fiancé." Ethan's expression darkened, transforming in an instant into something lethal. Eric pushed past Ethan as if he had the right to enter, and Ethan blocked him with an arm across the threshold. "You do not walk in here. Move," Eric barked. "She needs to come home." "She is not going anywhere with you," Ethan said, voice dangerously calm. Eric sneered. "You think you can keep her? She belongs with me." Lena felt the old terror claw up her spine. Eric had never hit her, but his control had been suffocating, his anger unpredictable, his charm poisonous. He stepped forward again. "Lena, tell him to move." She forced the words out. "I am not coming with you." Eric laughed cold and sharp. "You think marrying a billionaire changes who you are. You think this rich boy knows anything about you. You did not tell him why you really needed the money." The way he emphasized really made her stomach twist. Ethan's jaw tightened. Eric continued stepping closer, as if trying to crowd her back into the shadows she had escaped. "Tell him how your sister disappeared because she was mixed up in things far worse than you ever admitted. Tell him how you have debt in my name. Tell him how you begged me for help." Lena's breath shook. "None of that is true," she whispered. Eric smirked knowingly. The manipulator in him loved twisting truth until it resembled guilt. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself entirely between Lena and her past. You need to leave, now. Eric's gaze hardened. Not until she comes with me. Ethan's voice dropped an octave. She is not yours. Eric lunged forward. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing him by the front of his jacket and shoving him back hard enough that the man hit the hallway wall. You will not raise your voice at her. You will not step 1 foot into this home. And if you ever threaten her again, I will bury you in litigation so deep you will never see daylight. Eric's chuckle was a dark, simmering sound. You think money scares me? I know people with leverage you cannot buy. And they want her quiet. The threat was unmistakable. Ethan's grip tightened. Who are you talking about? Eric grinned. Ask her. She knows exactly who she is running from. Ethan shoved him away again. Leave before I call security. Before Eric could get another word out, building security rushed in from the elevator, alerted by the noise. Ethan nodded sharply. Remove him, now. They dragged Eric away, his voice echoing down the hall. You cannot protect her forever. She is in deeper than you know. When the door slammed shut, silence fell over the penthouse like a heavy fog. Ethan turned slowly toward Lena. His eyes were not angry now, they were devastated. You knew he might come. You knew your past was dangerous, and you chose not to tell me any of it. She shook her head, tears threatening. I did not know he would come. I swear. Ethan's voice broke. But you knew someone might. You knew someone was following you. You knew you were not safe, and you let me bring you into my home anyway. She reached for him, desperate. Ethan, I did not want to be a danger to you. I thought if I could just stay quiet long enough to get help for my mother and find answers about my sister, everything would settle. I never wanted this to touch you. He stepped back from her touch, his breath uneven. It already has. Lena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Darkness swelled in her chest. Ethan stared at her, pain sharpening every line of his face. You should have told me everything from the beginning. I could have protected you. I could have made choices. But you took that from me. Tears welled in her eyes. Please, Ethan, I was trying to survive. I was trying not to lose the only good thing I have left. His voice cracked. And instead you lost my trust. The sentence hit her harder than any shouted anger could have. Eric's threat had been terrifying. Ethan's words were soul-breaking. She whispered, voice trembling. I did not mean to hurt you, I know. His whisper was barely audible. But you did. And now I need space, real space. He turned away before she could speak again. Lena pressed a hand against her mouth, muffling a cry. She had survived so much already. But this hurt in a way nothing else ever had. The past had found her, and now it was tearing the future she desperately wanted apart. The penthouse felt colder the next morning, as if Ethan's silence had seeped into the walls overnight and washed every trace of warmth from the air. Lena barely slept. She sat curled on the edge of her bed until dawn, replaying every word, every expression on Ethan's face as he stepped away from her. She kept hearing the same sentence over and over, a quiet blade lodged in her heart. You lost my trust. Around mid-morning, she stepped into the hallway and found the penthouse still and immaculate, but wrong somehow. Ethan was in the living room, standing near the tall windows that painted him in gray light. He looked exhausted in a way she had never seen before. His shoulders tense, his jaw tight, his eyes hollow from a night spent fighting battles he never wanted to face. He did not turn when she approached, She stood several steps behind him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan." He answered without looking back. "I have a meeting soon. I do not have much time." The distance in his tone sliced straight through her chest. She clasped her hands together to stop them trembling. "I want to explain. I want you to understand why I kept things from you." His voice remained calm but unnervingly detached. "I understand perfectly. You thought you were protecting me and yourself. But the problem is not your intention. It is the fact that you made that choice alone." She swallowed hard. "I am sorry. I know that is not enough, but it is all I have." For a moment he almost softened. She saw it in the way his shoulders shifted, as if some part of him wanted to turn toward her, but the hurt was stronger. He stepped forward away from her. The sound of that distance, those few feet, stretching between them, felt like the slow fracturing of something fragile. After a painful silence, Ethan finally turned his head slightly, not enough to meet her eyes, but enough to show he was listening. "I asked Solstice to pause the public announcements about our marriage timeline." Her breath caught. He continued. "The gala created rumors. Investors want clarity. I need to provide it." There was no anger in his voice, but the steady professionalism told her exactly what she feared. "You are ending the contract." The words came out cracked. Ethan finally turned to face her. His expression was not cold, it was broken. "No, not yet. But I need time to evaluate the risk. I need time to understand what your past actually involves, and whether keeping you here puts you in more danger or me in more danger." She stepped closer, desperation rising. "I would never hurt you. I know." His voice softened for a fraction of a second. "But danger does not always come from intention. Sometimes it comes from people who want to hurt everything around you. People like Eric, people like whoever is behind those threats. You told me your sister was involved in something dangerous. You told me you think she is alive. Whoever made her disappear is not done with you." He inhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I cannot gamble with that. I cannot let myself care about something that might be taken away again." The admission lodged itself inside her like a painful truth. She was not the only one terrified of loss. Ethan had lived through a different kind of abandonment, a betrayal that left him hollowed out and cautious. He was afraid of falling again, afraid of letting someone close, afraid of being hurt, and she had just proven his fear right. Tears filled her eyes, but she fought them. "Ethan, we can fix this. We can work through this. We can figure out how to be honest with each other. Not if you are in danger, not if being close to me puts you at risk, or vice versa." She stepped even closer, her voice trembling. "Please do not push me out. Please do not do this." For a long moment, Ethan looked at her, truly looked at her. Seeing the vulnerability, she no longer tried to hide. His voice cracked. "I am not pushing you out. I am protecting myself. And maybe protecting you too." She felt the meaning behind the words. He cared, and caring scared him. Slowly, Ethan walked past her toward the hallway. "I will be at the office for most of the day. I need space to think," she whispered, barely audible. "Do you want me to stay away when you return?" Ethan paused. Every part of him wanted to say no, wanted to say stay, wanted to admit that her presence had become something he relied on, something that steadied him in ways he was not ready to understand. But fear, old familiar fear, won. "Yes, I think that would be best." The words knocked the breath out of her. He walked away without looking back, and Lena felt something inside her collapse. Hours passed in shards of silence. Lena moved around the penthouse like a ghost, her heart aching with every reminder of him. His jacket draped on the chair, the book she fell asleep reading, the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the hallway. Around sunset, her phone vibrated. A message from Solstice. Your marriage contract remains active pending evaluation. Please maintain expectations and refrain from public engagement. The words felt sterile, clinical, indifferent. She closed the message with shaking fingers. She could not keep living like this, suspended between hope and heartbreak. She needed to breathe. She needed to think. She needed to leave before Ethan returned, and the silence between them became unbearable. She packed slowly. Not much, a few clothes, her worn books, her mother's medical documents, the file about Emily she had hidden for months. When she zipped her small suitcase, the sound echoed painfully through the empty room. She walked into the living room one last time. The city lights glittered against the windows like stars too far away to reach. She pressed her palm against the glass where Ethan had stood so many nights. Goodbye, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. Not goodbye forever, just goodbye for now. She left the keycard on the counter, the small plastic rectangle, feeling heavier than any object she had ever held. Then she walked out, alone. The elevator descended slowly each floor, passing like a countdown to the end of whatever fragile thing had been forming between them. On the ground level, she stepped into the lobby suitcase, rolling quietly behind her. The doorman glanced up in surprise. "Miss Mercer, do you need a car arranged?" The title hit her like a punch. She cleared her throat. "No, I will take the subway." His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he nodded. "Very well." The city swallowed her quickly, its noise loud enough to drown out the ache in her chest. She rode the subway back to her old neighborhood, where the buildings were smaller, older, and far less forgiving. When she unlocked the door of her tiny apartment, the quiet pressed in on her like a memory she did not want to return to. She slid to the floor, her back against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest. She whispered into the empty room, "I ruined everything." Across the city, Ethan stepped into his penthouse hours later. He expected silence, he expected distance, but he did not expect emptiness. He walked into the living room and froze. Her keycard on the counter, her suitcase gone. Her presence erased so cleanly it felt like she had never been there at all. Something in his chest fractured. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in a quiet, devastating way that felt permanent. He picked up the keycard slowly, staring at it as if it were an artifact from another life. The keys trembled in his hand. He whispered into the empty room. "Don't leave." His voice broke. It was the first time he realized he was already in love with her. And she was gone. The morning after Lena left, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing yesterday's shirt, the fabric wrinkled, and smelling faintly of the rain from the night before. Sleep had not touched him. His eyes felt raw, his chest bruised by a hollow he could not name yet refused to ignore. He stared at the keycard she had left behind, still resting on his nightstand, a symbol of a choice she should never have had to make. He had spent years controlling his world with precision, building walls, building systems, building certainty. But none of that had prepared him for the imprint of a woman who had entered his life by mistake and left with his heart without ever meaning to. By 7 in the morning, He was already in the office long before any of his executives arrived. The building felt strangely alive at this hour, humming with the sound of deep cleaning and overnight cycles, but devoid of the usual chaos. Ethan walked into his private office and closed the door behind him. He knew exactly what he needed to do. His redemption would not be loud, it would not be effortless, and it would not be quick, but it would be deliberate and absolute. He sat at his desk and opened several files at once. His first step was the hardest. He pulled up the name Emily Carter, Lena's sister, missing, potentially trafficked, or hiding, or worse. Ethan did not let himself think about the worst. Focus. Fix one thing at a time. He began tracing her last known addresses, digital footprints, financial records, expired messages from forgotten accounts, medical records Lena had tucked into her mother's file. Every piece formed a trail, faint and broken but real. Ethan's mind moved in patterns others rarely understood, a precise algorithm of intuition and logic. He began building a timeline, discovering that Emily's disappearance aligned with a larger string of missing young women in New Jersey from the same year. He found a private shelter that had logged an anonymous sighting matching Emily's description. He found a letter Lena never saw, an email from a women's protection advocate who had reached out, but the message had been flagged as spam. Ethan forwarded everything to a private investigative team, the same team used by elite corporations and politicians. But he did not stop there. Redemption needed more than money. It needed heart. He called his legal team next, instructing them to analyze the threatening emails Lena had received, searching for patterns, IP obfuscation techniques, language quirks, anything that looked like a digital fingerprint. He told them to build a case, even if it meant assembling protection orders, connecting with federal agencies, or hiring digital forensics freelancers. He worked with a ferocity that startled even his closest staff. His assistant Maya walked in with coffee at 9 and froze at the sight of him. "You have not slept." She said it like a question, but her tone carried concern. "I need you to clear my entire week," he said without looking up. "Meetings, interviews, social obligations, everything." Maya hesitated. "Ethan, the board will clear it." His voice carried a gravity she rarely heard. She nodded and left to make the necessary cancellations. Hours passed. Ethan barely noticed. At noon, he received a message from his lead investigator. "We found something. Potential match." Ethan read the attached file. A woman fitting Emily's description had been seen at a church shelter in Jersey City just 3 days prior. No confirmed ID, no photo, but a birthmark on her shoulder, consistent with medical notes Lena had included in her file. Ethan exhaled slowly. It was the first breath of hope he had felt since the night she left. Another message arrived from the digital forensics team. The threatening emails had been traced to a burner device purchased in a small shop outside Brooklyn. Security footage showed a man whose face was partially visible, enough to build a lead. Ethan's jaw tightened. He sent orders immediately. Track every detail, get witness statements, pull purchase logs, and interview the store owner. Ethan worked through lunch, through afternoon, through evening. When the city lights began glowing against the windows, he finally closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. His body was exhausted, but his mind was sharper than ever. His thoughts kept circling back to one memory: Lena standing on the rooftop. After the gala hair pulled by the wind, her eyes soft when she looked at him. She had opened her heart slowly, gently, one piece at a time. and he had not handled it with the care it deserved. He had let fear win. Tonight he would not let fear win again. He stood, grabbed his coat, and left the office long after the building had emptied. Instead of going home, he went to the one place he knew he needed to face. Lena's old apartment. The hallway smelled of old paint and instant noodles, the kind of scent that had become Lena's reality long before she ever stepped into his world. The door to her unit was closed, lights off. He knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. A neighbor cracked their door open, eyeing him suspiciously. "You look like you're lost." The woman's voice was gruff, but not unfriendly. Ethan cleared his throat. "I am looking for the tenant of 3B. The woman raised an eyebrow. "The girl with the books. She left this morning." Ethan's heart stopped. "Do you know where she went?" The neighbor crossed her arms with a kind of protective posture Ethan understood instantly. She seemed to be deciding whether he deserved an answer. Finally, she sighed. She was crying when she left. Left a note on the door for the landlord saying she was vacating early. Ethan swallowed hard. Did she say where she was going? The neighbor shook her head. That girl keeps her pain quiet. But she did mention going to see her mother at the care center. Ethan nodded once, thanked her, and hurried out. The care center was across the city, a modest facility with clean hallways and warm lighting. When Ethan walked in, the night attendant blinked in recognition. "Mr. Mercer, are you here for Lena Carter?" He nodded. The attendant checked the record. She visited earlier today, stayed for about an hour. No one else came with her. Ethan felt disappointment surge through him, but he steadied himself. "Do you know where she went after?" The attendant shook her head. She seemed upset. "That is all I can say." Ethan walked back out into the night, the wind colder than before. The city's noise louder than usual. He leaned against the railing outside the building, closed his eyes, and finally allowed himself to feel what he had been running from all day. He missed her. Not the contract, not the convenience, not the perfection Solstice had promised. Her. The woman who drank cheap diner coffee with too much sugar. The woman who talked to books like they were old friends. The woman who flinched at loud noises but never flinched away from kindness. The woman who stared at the world with bruised hope and gave more than she had. He whispered, voice shaking, "I am so sorry, Lena. I am so stupid." He opened his eyes and looked at the skyline. Redemption was not about making grand gestures. It was about showing up. It was about choosing someone even when it was complicated. It was about doing the work quietly. He straightened, pulled out his phone, and sent a message to Maya. "Have security prepare my travel kit. I am not going home tonight." She responded within seconds. "Understood. Should I ask where you are heading?" Ethan typed the words slowly, deliberately. "I am going to find her, and when I do, I will bring her home. Not the penthouse, not the contract. Home, in every sense of the word." Ethan found Lena 2 days later, though it felt like weeks had passed. Time no longer behaved normally around her absence. It stretched, twisted, ached. He barely slept, barely ate, living instead on determination and the sharp pulsing need to make things right. The breakthrough came late in the afternoon when his investigative team notified him that Lena had purchased a long-distance bus ticket, leaving Manhattan early that morning. Destination, a quiet coastal town in Rhode Island. Ethan stared at the notification for a long moment, feeling the familiar thud of adrenaline. She was running not because she wanted to disappear, but because she did not want to burden him further. That realization hurt more than any injury he had ever endured. Within an hour, Ethan was in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel as he sped up the interstate toward the small town where she had gone to breathe. The sky dimmed into violet gray as he crossed the state line headlights carving long streaks of gold across the empty road. He kept replaying the moment she walked out of the penthouse in his mind. Every word he said that pushed her away. Every silence he should have filled. Every truth he should have trusted her with. By the time he reached the small coastal town, the air was briny cold and filled with distant seagull cries. He parked near the bus stop, his pulse pounding. Before he stepped out of the car, he saw her. Lena sat alone on the bench near the pier, her suitcase beside her. Her hair pulled into a loose braid that the wind kept unraveling. She wore the same coat she had arrived at the penthouse in, the one she refused to replace, even when he offered. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, watching the tide roll toward shore. Her expression was tired, heartbreakingly so. She looked exactly like someone who had run out of places to stand. Ethan crossed the pavement slowly, afraid that if he moved too quickly, the moment would scatter like fragile glass. Lena heard his steps before she saw him. She turned freezing when her eyes met his. Surprise flashed first, then worry, then something like resignation. "Ethan," her voice cracked softly. "What are you doing here?" He stopped a few feet away, breathing hard even though he had not run. "I came for you." She blinked, confused and wary. "That makes no sense. You asked me to leave. You said you needed space." He shook his head, emotion tightening his throat. "I said a lot of things out of fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of not being enough. Fear of letting you get too close to me. But none of those fears matter now." She stood slowly, but she kept her arms wrapped around herself like a shield. "Ethan, you do not understand. You were right to hesitate. I bring danger. My past is messy and complicated. My sister's disappearance is not something you should have to fix." And the threats, he stepped closer, gently but firmly cutting her off. "I already have people on every angle. We have leads, real ones. We found a possible shelter where Emily was seen. We tracked the man who sent those threats. We are pursuing both." For a moment, Lena looked like she might collapse. Her lips parted, eyes filling, breath catching in her chest. "You did all that. For me, for you, and for her. And for every part of your past no one ever helped you carry." A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. "You did not have to. You do not owe me anything, I know, but I want to." She shook her head, voice trembling. "Why? Why would you choose someone with so many broken pieces?" Ethan swallowed, stepping close enough to touch her but still giving her room. "Because the world has already given up on too many people who deserved better. You are not another person I let slip away." Her breath hitched. Ethan lifted a small folder from under his arm. It was worn from the drive, creased from being opened and closed again and again. "I tracked every possible lead on Emily. I have a full team searching, and I learned something important about you in the process." He handed her the folder, but she did not take it yet. Instead, she searched his face as though trying to understand this version of him she had never seen. "What did you learn?" Ethan's voice dropped warm and steady. "That you fight for the people you love, even when the world does not fight for you." And I should have done the same for you sooner." Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment. When she opened them again, they were shining. Ethan took a breath, gathering courage. "Lena, the contract is ruined. It never worked the way it was meant to." She nodded slowly, whispering, "I know." He shook his head. "No, you don't. It did not work because I fell in love with you." Her hand flew to her mouth. Ethan stepped forward, closing the space between them, his heart pounding so intensely he could feel it in his palms. "The contract was supposed to protect me, but it never did. You did. Your honesty, your strength, your compassion. You made my world feel like something alive again." Lena shook her head, tears falling freely now. "Ethan?" Ethan cupped her cheeks gently, his thumbs brushing away the tears. "I do not want a contract wife. I do not want a convenience. I want you, only you, if you will have me." A broken laugh slipped from her lips, half disbelief, half relief. "You cannot just say things like that, Ethan Mercer. Not after everything." "Yes, I can. Because it is the only truth that ever mattered." He took a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Her breath stopped completely. Ethan opened it. The ring was simple but exquisite. A thin, elegant band with a diamond, small enough to be understated but bright enough to catch starlight. Lena stared at it as though she were afraid it was not real. He lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hands. "Lena Carter, will you marry me? Not for the contract, not for the press, not for convenience or image or obligation, but for real, for a life, for partnership, for every day that scared us and every day that heals us." She trembled, her tears falling onto their joined hands. Ethan looked up at her with a vulnerability she had never seen in him before. The wind whipped across the pier, carrying the salty scent of the sea. Lena bent down slowly, her forehead touching his. Her breath shook. "I was so afraid you would not want me, that you would realize I was not the woman in your file." He smiled softly, painfully. "I never wanted the woman in the file. I wanted the woman who showed up. The imperfect one, the brave one, the real one." She let out a sob, nodding, then another, and finally she whispered the words that broke both of them open. "Yes, Ethan, yes." A shaky exhale escaped him as he rose to his feet and pulled her into his arms with a mixture of relief and awe. She melted into him, instantly gripping the back of his coat, as though she were afraid he might disappear. He held her tightly, fiercely, grounding her with the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his heartbeat, the certainty of his love. He kissed her, then slow and trembling his lips, brushing hers like a promise. Not rushed, not desperate, but certain, absolute. A kiss that said they had endured fear, survived loss, and chosen each other anyway. When they finally pulled apart, Lena rested her forehead against his chest, her voice soft but sure. "Ethan, let's go home." He nodded, pressing a kiss into her hair. "Yes, home." The word felt different now, sacred, real. Not a penthouse, not an arrangement, not a contract. Something they would build together. Brick by brick, choice by choice, love by love. 1 year later, the penthouse did not look like the same place Lena had first stepped into on that cold November night. The sterile white walls had been softened with warm earth tones. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves now lined the hallway, each one filled with Lena's beloved paperbacks and Ethan's newly acquired habit of annotating passages that reminded him of her. Potted plants filled the window ledges, sunlight filtering through leaves that stretched greedily toward the sky. The glass dining table had been replaced with a wooden one from a small artisan shop Lena loved, and the place settings never quite matched, because Ethan insisted mismatching felt more like a real home than symmetry ever could. The scent of simmering tomato soup drifted from the kitchen where Lena stirred, gently humming under her breath. She wore a soft sweater, her hair pulled loosely into a bun that kept falling apart. Ethan loved it that way. She glanced at the clock on the wall just as the elevator doors clicked open. Ethan walked in a moment later, loosening his tie, exhausted but smiling in the warm, contented way of a man who finally understood balance. He dropped his briefcase on the counter and walked straight to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind as she stirred the pot. He pressed a kiss to her cheek. "I missed you." She smiled softly. "You were only gone for 8 hours, too long." He rested his face against her shoulder, breathing her in. He had not known how cold his life had been until she brought warmth into it. Lena turned in his arms and touched his face, gently tracing the faint line of stubble along his jaw. "You worked too hard today." He shrugged. "I work less than I used to. That is all because of you." She rolled her eyes playfully. "No, that is because you learned how to delegate." He gave a mock offended gasp. "Delegating was your idea, and a brilliant one." She kissed him lightly. "There is bread warming in the oven. Sit, dinner will be ready soon." He sat at the table, watching her move around the kitchen. He never got tired of it. The simple domestic rhythm she brought into his life. The easy silence, the occasional laughter. The way she turned their space into something real. Something lived in, something loved. On the far counter sat a stack of pamphlets from the community library. Lena glanced at them with pride as she set bowls on the table. "The Women's Reading Initiative is getting funding," she said, unable to hide the excitement in her voice. "The grant approved this morning." Ethan's smile widened. "You worked hard for that. You should be proud." She sat beside him. "I could not have done it without you helping with the proposal edits." He shook his head. "You wrote it. You built the program. You earned it." Her cheeks warmed. Even now, praise still touched her in a tender, vulnerable way. They ate together quietly for a few minutes, listening to the soft hum of the city through the windows. The life outside moved fast, always pushing, always demanding. But inside these walls, everything felt unhurried, present, whole. After dinner, Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Are you happy?" The question was gentle, not anxious, but deeply sincere. Lena smiled at him with a softness that felt like sunlight. "I am more than happy. I am at peace, and I am in love." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "Good. That is all I ever wanted." She leaned her forehead against his. "You used to think love was a weakness," he chuckled quietly. "You turned it into the strongest thing I have." She laughed warm and light. "And you used to think marriage was a contract." He kissed her lightly. "Now I know it is a choice, every day." She stood then and pulled him up with her. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He let her lead him down the hallway to the small room they had converted into her creative space. The walls were covered in prints of her favorite book covers. A wooden desk sat under the window, stacked with research notes pens and sticky tabs. On the desk lay a framed photo of Emily. 6 months earlier, they found her in a shelter in upstate New York. She had been malnourished, scared, and silent at first, but alive. Lena visited her every week. Ethan made sure she always had transportation. Slowly, Emily began to heal. Slowly, she began to laugh again. Tonight, Lena picked up a letter from the desk and handed it to Ethan. It was from Emily, her handwriting still shaky but hopeful. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for believing I deserved a life. Thank you for giving my sister the happiness she always dreamed of." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He set the letter down carefully. She is doing better. She is fighting. She is coming back to herself. That is because of you. Lena shook her head. That is because of us, because she saw what love could look like, real love. He cupped her face. You saved her, and you saved me too. She rested her hands over his. You saved me first. They held each other for a long moment, listening to the steady rhythm of the city, outside a rhythm that once felt overwhelming to Lena, but now felt like part of their world, part of their belonging. Later that night, they curled up together on the couch, blankets pulled over their legs, the fireplace flickering. Ethan rested his head against Lena's as she read aloud from one of her favorite books. Her voice was soft and steady, smoothing the edges of the long day. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the sound of her carry him. "This is everything," he whispered. She looked down at him. "What do you mean?" He lifted her hand to his lips again. "This, you, us, the life we built." She kissed the top of his head. "You built it with me, together." Months ago he had believed having someone in his life would weaken him. Now he knew the truth. Loving her had made him braver, softer, better. As the fire crackled and the city glowed outside their windows, Lena whispered something that made him smile against her skin. "You know, Ethan, you never got the bride your agency promised." He laughed quietly, pulling her closer. "No, I got someone better, someone real, someone who showed up when the world expected her to stay invisible. Someone who made my life feel like home for the first time." She touched his cheek tenderly, "And I got someone who saw me when no one else did. Someone who believed in me before I learned to believe in myself." He closed his eyes, his voice a soft vow. "I will never stop choosing you." She smiled. "Then we are even." They leaned into each other as the night settled around them warm and gentle. The city kept moving, rushing, demanding, dreaming. But inside their home, time slowed and softened. The woman who had arrived in his life unexpectedly had given him something no agency, no contract, no billion-dollar empire ever could. A place to belong, a reason to breathe, a future to build. And as Ethan held her close, as Lena rested her head on his shoulder, one truth settled deep into the quiet between them. He expected a contract wife. Life sent him love, and it was perfect. Thank you for staying with this story until the very last heartbeat. If you reached this moment, it means something in Ethan and Lena's journey touched your own heart, whether it was the loneliness they carried, the courage it took to choose love, or the miracle of building a home out of two imperfect souls who finally found a place to belong. Before you go, I want to leave you with a little something. Stories like this are not just made of words. They are made of people like you who sit with your headphones in or curl up on the couch after a long day or listen while you drive to work, carrying exhaustion, hope, and a craving for something real. If this story gave you even one moment of escape, one tear, one smile, one warm breath in your chest, then let me know in the comments. Tell me what part stayed with you. Was it the moment Lena knocked on a billionaire's penthouse door, unsure if she belonged anywhere at all? Was it Ethan kneeling on that windy Rhode Island pier, his voice shaking, as he offered his heart instead of a contract? Or maybe the moment they sat beside the fireplace, wrapped in blankets and the quiet kind of love that does not shout but stays. Your comments help shape the next story, the next journey, the next pair of strangers who fall in love in a way that feels both impossible and completely meant to be. And I want to hear from you. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me what brought you to this channel. Tell me if you want more billionaire love stories, more healing romances, more second chance arcs, more runaway brides, more mountain men, more CEOs with wounded hearts, more single dads who fall in love quietly and completely. I read everything, truly. And if you are new here, welcome to the family. This channel is a place for people who believe love can still be gentle, even in a world that feels sharp. A place for people who believe that healing is possible, even when life has left scars. A place for people who still want to feel something. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next story. Every day I bring you a new romance, filled with emotion, tension, healing, and that cinematic feeling we all crave. And if you want to support the channel, the simplest way is to like this video, share it with a friend who loves romance, or leave a comment telling me which character you would want to read about next. Before you leave, answer me this in the comments. Do you believe love is something we find or something we choose? Ethan and Lena learned the truth in their own way. Maybe you have too. Maybe your heart has been waiting to say it out loud. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing in love, even on the days it feels out of reach. I will see you in the next story. Until then, stay safe, stay soft, and stay hopeful.